From the garage that sparked the global self-care movement, welcome to the Human Garage Experience, a podcast where we have unfiltered conversations on self-healing, consciousness, and optimizing your life with fascinating individuals changing the status quo. I'm your host, Gary Lynham, and I'm honored to have you here. Let's get down to it. And today we're here with Tim Gray. Tim the Biohacker. I've followed him for years, and we're going to talk today about going back to basics and what are the technologies that lead us back into the basic parts of nature and health. What's happening with AI in health and so much more. This is a powerful episode. Stay tuned.
I'm Tim Biohacker. I run the Health Optimization Summit in London and Austin, Texas. Today, really excited to be interviewed by Gary, and we're talking about AI, health optimization, biohacking, where trends are going, and the absolute basics you got to do.
I mean, we didn't talk to you for a long time. I mean, we've had some social interaction, but you're most likely the most prolific biohacker probably in the world, I would say.
Top three, I would say so, top three.
Yeah, and I say that because a lot of biohackers have knowledge in science, and they have it in a specific area. Very few of them have implementation, and I've seen you knowledge, implementation, and I've seen you recommend and also get feedback. So you actually, in the same way that a practitioner has information, you're a biohacker who's seen the results of the recommendations that you've given. How did you get into this? Like, what was the driving point?
Thank you for noticing. I am a marketing and psychology guy, and used for ethical reasons. I've had marketing agencies in the past, and always been a business guy since my early 20s. But I got to 32 and started having health issues, quite bad ones, IBS, frequent urination of going toilet 30 to 50 times a day, brain fog, chronic fatigue, multiple infections, multiple surgeries, so many things that it just literally went from being a very busy business guy enjoying building through to not being able to leave the house and having to ask your mum at 32 to drive me to the doctors, that type of level. And after a year of multiple things that you shouldn't have at 32, not knowing what's going on, I got fed up with the doctors saying we can't find anything wrong, and being told it was in my head. And I got to the end of the road one day. I remember saying, it's like, I don't think I can go much further with this because my life is disappearing in front of me. And then they started making a note on the computer. Is it like, oh, he's not mentally stable.
He's not mentally stable.
And I was just like, don't make a note of that. I'm not suicidal, but I'm just telling you I can't continue like this. And then on the way home in the car with my mum, it's just like the doctor shrugged their shoulders and said, we can't find anything wrong. It's like, I know now that I need to optimize this thing to figure out how to fix this thing, because they're not going to help. And so I got a pack of Post-it notes, all the symptoms up on the wall, cause and effect, started researching them on forums, because there wasn't things like, Dr. Mark Hyman or Dr. Joe McCullough or Instagram influencers sharing all this information. It wasn't readily available. You had to dig in on forums. Sure. And figured out what it was, or what I thought it was at the time, and just kept on optimizing. And I was taking supplements, like lots and lots and lots of supplements, and doing liver flushes and cleanses and all this stuff, trying to figure out what had gone wrong. And I think, if you go to a doctor and you say, I've got this, and they say, okay, here's what the medical books say, they haven't lived it. They don't know it from first-hand experience. They know what they've been told should work. That's diluted. It's far down the chain. Medically wise, in how the body works in many ways, and medicine's 100%, you can't trust an influencer with that. However, when someone's lived something, it's the heuristic for trusting them, because we go to a doctor as a heuristic of trust because they know better than us. What happens if in an area there is someone that knows better than them? That's who we should go with, right? So I just carried on digging down the rabbit hole, and it's been 12 years or so now of continuing to figure out the next thing to work on. Yeah.
I have several experiences. I mean, that was my journey, 20 years, $2.5 million, and became a clinical practitioner. And it was okay because I was constantly applying worked myself in a clinic, and the pandemic came and I was actually in trouble again. And I realized that all the science, all the knowledge, and all the clinical application didn't really actually help me. It was moving me along, and I was reasonably getting better, but I still wasn't in a place where I wanted to be. So I find a lot of people have lived experience who are able to convey that. And we have a children's group where we have parents in there, and it started off with extremely autistic, cerebral palsy, can't walk, blastomas, like kids who are really in trouble. That's how the group started. And then practitioners and doctors of specialties would come into the group and help. And what I found is that the parents actually had more knowledge than all of the doctors combined. And because they had lived that experience with a child for 8, 10, 12, 15 years, where they had been to hundreds of doctors and done their own research. And so basically what you're saying is that you took charge of your own health. Mm-hmm. You went and did the research. And what did that lead you to? Like, what were the big changes for you that brought you back to health? The turning points?
Compound effect of many things. However, I did find out that I had mercury poisoning, and mercury poisoning came from metal fillings, and because I was eating lots and lots and lots of sushi, which also ties into parasites. And parasites and mercury poisoning are hand in hand. You know, they go hand in hand. Typical medical people probably won't agree, and they say that's controversial and there's no studies behind it, and yet there's a massive body of evidence growing of how they are hand in hand.
But there actually are studies.
Yeah, but I mean, no typical medical training people say, oh, mercury poisoning is a thing, but no one has it, and it has to be ridiculously high levels. But functional medicine says otherwise these days. And,
yeah.
But anyway, so for me, it was mercury poisoning, which I thought was the top of the chart of Post-it notes. It turned out that in later 2015 or 16 that something called methylation in DNA testing, MTHFR, which Gary Brecker is very well known for talking about methylation nowadays, and it kind of went crazy when he started talking about it, was methylation is to methylate, which is energy production, detoxification, blood formation, and things like balancing hormones. So it's a very interesting set of genes, MTHFR. And for me, I had a downregulation of these, which meant 40% less detoxification, meaning that having metal fillings for me and smoking cigarettes I did from 16 until 26 meant that my body wasn't detoxifying them properly through methylation, meaning that I stored them all up, which got to the point where my cells just couldn't operate correctly. Mm-hmm. So for me, mercury chelation was one of these pieces of the puzzle to help get that, let's say the pollutant out of the body. Sure. But then to make sure that the body didn't fill back up again, it was working on methylation processes, which is, in simple forms, B12, methylfolate, trimethylglycine, and various other things to support methylation, which is why, some people do well on vegan diet and some people don't. Some people do very well because they're a good methylator. Some people don't do well on vegan because they're a bad methylator and they need significantly more B12, which means that they don't detox, which is why some people say, it's amazing veganism, and other people say, oh, it's horrible for me. Well, genetics play.
They play a role, for sure.
And the other thing in this is it's a funny thing, this, and I was discussing this last night with Eric Meadows, actually, who talks about ancestral and tribal diets and lifestyles. Methylation is around 40% of the population has some form of methylation downregulation. Okay, 40%. Mm-hmm. And why is it so prevalent? Well, people with methylation, depending on the variants, break down neurotransmitters differently. So it can be higher in dopamine. So they're actually often higher achievers because they're almost obsessive about what they do, which means that they can achieve more success, more looking for more partners, etc., 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 opposed to the ones that are more chilled and don't need to chase all the stimulus, you see. Right. So therefore, those tend to do better in the world and mate more, therefore it becomes more prevalent, which is natural selection in some form, but then as a result, the population, a large part of the population has this gene. Yeah. So I just worked on that, and I have done now for, best part of 10 or 11 years, ongoing, and it's the supplementation I will never stop because my body relies on it from a genetic point of view.
What have you found? I mean, clearly you've had your own issues, and you've gone through this journey, and you help people with respect to that. There's been a shift in the way that the health influencers, the leaders of health, or the governments and stuff like that, are looking at let's say biohacking. And I don't really want to say biohacking, because biohacking is starting to get a bad name because of a lot of people just doing dumb stuff. But you have become a leader where governments and people are actually calling you to come in and help them figure out issues for health systems, governments, the society as a whole. Where did that transition happen for you? Is it?
It's a good question. I would say put it this way: if the Prime Minister's son had a health issue and was going around the medical system and it couldn't be helped, what would he do? He would find the best person for the job. And this is often how innovation happens in this space, where they realise actually it's broken because of self-interest. You know, and I'm not working to do with anything with the Prime Minister, by the way. It was just an example of an extreme game changer within, you know, a set of systems. So, you know, when people have heard some of the things that and I'm not a health practitioner, I don't give one-on-one advice, by the way. I share out what works based on my experience, and then bring together speakers such as yourself and put them on the stage so they can share what they've learned from an expert's perspective, because I'm not an expert in everything. I'm more of a overview of everything and learn from everyone around me. And then, like before we were recording, you talked about something or other, and I said, oh, I know someone with that. And, you know, so it's kind of like, I know, I think it was Henry Ford that was quoted on saying this. He was taken to court for
being an idiot.
Yeah, and he was like, well, in front of me I have a row of buttons, and with every button I have an expert, so ask me anything. You know, and when someone says to me, Tim, you don't have any qualifications, I do actually, in cognitive hypnotherapy and psychology, quite a lot, but in nutrition, no. It's self-interest, self-learning, and learning from the best in the world. And literally the authors themselves. So when you're seen on stage speaking about these things that have worked for people over and over and over again, when there's a medical system that doesn't help with chronic health issues, people are like, this guy is the heuristic to get me to what I need to get to. So forget what's proven. I need to fix something quick. Okay, Tim, can you help? Okay, I'll introduce you to this person. And that's typically how and why. It's the same with you, I expect, within what you do. People are like, oh, I've been dealing with this for ages, or, you know, okay, he's the man, how can you help? And that's it. So I think it's just, there's a saying, actions speak louder than words, but consistency speaks louder than both. You know, and I think when so many people, when you reach 250 to 300 million people a year, word spreads.
Yeah, I guess that is the point. And I think that's really what I wanted to point out, because, you know, I didn't go to medical school. I hired the best practitioners in the world. I learned from them. I became a clinician. I practiced under, I'm really good at legal too, so I practiced under informed consent. So I was able to practice as a practitioner without actually having a medical designation. But what that gave me was the ability to go outside of the boundaries like you have and look at all of the different situations and not be pigeonholed into one. And, you know, that's why I've been following you for years, and I've always gotten great advice from where you've led me. You've always led me in the right direction. I've been watching your stuff, and when I met you at Superhuman the first time, I've been looking to meet you and to get to know the story, because I really wanted to understand what was it that drove you to know all this stuff. Because it's obvious that the world's leaders and the best people in the world come to you when they need to solve a problem. And I've also noticed people refer to you, the doctors or specialists, when there's a problem outside of their area, they immediately refer to you to help people go and find other solutions. And that's been coming up over and over and over again. So I wanted to ask, in the space of biohacking, because it's a very big word and it's being abused right now. What's going right? What's going wrong with it?
Like with anything that grows quickly, people that want to make money jump into it. And it sometimes becomes not so much about health and it becomes more about making money. I also think the lines with biohacking are blurred because biohacking is subjective. It could be transhumanist, futurist stuff, or it can be health related, or it can be diet related, or one of many things. That's why when I decided to do my conference, I called it the Health Optimization Summit, not the Biohacking Conference or Biohacker Summit, like my colleagues and friends have. And that's because you know what it does from the name. It's always drawn back to what it is based on the name, and it's not subjective. And I think as a result, it hasn't, let's say, been bastardized, health optimization specifically, because it's always held to that title. But I think with biohacking, and while I am Tim Biohacker, I think there's so many people, opportunists, trying to make money from it. And therefore, there's lots of things that are just squeezed into it to make money, opposed to the things that actually move the needle. And it's actually one of my biggest roles is to test, try stuff, see what should be on our expo floor, and turn away the things that I think is snake oil or whatever. And I get it right most of the time. Occasionally, something comes through that we need to not work with again. But I think the other part of that is money drives innovation. But also money creates problems that we then create solutions to fix. So, sure. For instance, you don't need a grounding bed sheet if you live in nature. Yeah. You don't need a red light panel if you live by the beach. You don't need air filters if you live, in nature. I mean, it's just we're creating problems, but at the same time, we do have a pretty wonderful life. To quote Jimmy Carr recently from some content I saw, he said, 100 years ago, anyone that we admired didn't have a hot shower in the morning. And yet it's one of our most basic enjoyed things of our lives. And if you let that sink in for a second, nobody from our past, prior to our grandparents, I guess, had a hot shower in the morning, and they survived. So it's a real luxury, but what's the cost? Chlorine and fluoridated water on a hot shower that opens up your pores, which then causes toxicity. So we're kind of it's like a tug of war between the two. So to take it back to your question, it's like we're creating problems and we're creating solutions for those problems, and sometimes those solutions aren't needed, and there's loads of things that make their way in. And I think it's very difficult to pin it onto one thing.
How do we sort through the noise? Because there is a lot of noise, and I agree with you. It's gone past health, and I appreciate Health Optimization Summit because that makes sense. But how do we weed through all the noise right now? What's the best solution for someone?
Well, what works for you might not work for me. That's the first thing. So it's not a stable baseline to work from. It's not like, oh, this worked for me, so therefore it will work for you. So therefore someone might call BS on something that might actually work for them. So that's also a factor. There's always a miracle new compound or supplement or something or other that you can't live without, even though we've lived without it for millennia. So there's also that to play in there. I think it's people like myself, Ben Greenfield, Dave Asprey, Temu Arena, Gary Brecker, and Max Lugavere, and people like this that I recommend you follow all of these guys that test this stuff out and put themselves out there. And we might seem to be extreme, but the thing is we're testing things because we're then sharing it with the world as what actually moves the needle and what doesn't. There's often things that I've done in the past and I'm like, actually this doesn't really move the needle. It might work for someone else, but it doesn't work for me. And I'm known to say that. Or if I try something and then I change my opinion on it, then I'm quite open to changing my opinion on it. So
would that be strong views loosely held?
Nicely said, yeah. Yeah, it is, yeah, exactly.
Thanks for watching and tuning in. These conversations have radically shifted my life, and I want you to experience those radical shifts too. Take these conversations and integrate them into your body by joining one of our fascial maneuver reset programs. Introduction to fascial maneuvers, 7-day reset or 28-day reset. We're gonna put the links below. Take that cerebral knowledge and that experience that you're having right now and bring it into your life by resetting it in your body. These programs have radically shifted my life, and I know they'll radically shift yours. Don't wait another moment, reset your life today. I think that's what you have to be in this space, because you are trying things, and there is sometimes you come against a period of time where I've tried something, it seemed to work for a period of time, and then long term there was a negative effect or a diminished effect, right?
I mean, I think if we look at if we look at pharmaceuticals, like for instance in the longevity space, longevity is the label for the money side of biohacking, where all the investment is going, where everyone's talking about longevity because it's the buzzword and where all the investors are going. And if you put longevity on it, it puts the valuation up.
Mm-hmm.
But if we look at the longevity space and the medicines that are used in this space, and they say, oh, this is amazing, it's going to slow down aging, or it stops your, it slows down your sugar metabolism, or speeds it up, or does whatever. If it's a pharmaceutical, it's generally not what we evolve with. And, you know, if we look at GLP-1, for instance, for a second, how widespread that's gone, we didn't evolve with it. And 50 years ago, if you look at obesity in the population, it didn't really exist in the same way as it does today. And we, instead of making lifestyle changes and saying, hey, I am going to eat better and I'm not going to eat processed food, which from whole foods, you produce more of your own GLP-1.
Right.
And yet we're taking a drug. And then there's, you know, rapamycin and all these other drugs that longevity doctors are taking that they're saying it's amazing. Well, in fact, you don't need, in my opinion, you don't need any of that stuff. You need to just live healthy, eat healthy, move properly. And in fact, there's, you know, studies come out that these pharmaceuticals go big and everyone wants to use them. They're on them for 3 or 4 years, and then another study comes out and says the opposite, and everyone jumps off of it.
Yeah, that begs, I mean, there's 2 things I want to say. The first one is, being here in Amsterdam, I was a little shocked. I'm sitting here on the edge of the water where everybody comes here because it's the fresh water and they swim here. One thing I noticed, which was shocking, is that if you're under the age of 40, 45, maybe even 50, every single person is lean and has abs. Every woman and every man has abs here. And I mean, to an extreme amount, because like, you're coming primarily from Canada, United States, and nobody has it. There's only 1 out of every 20 or 30. And one thing I've noticed about being here is that they take care of the city water is carbon filtered and light filtered, and there's nothing else put in it. The other thing too is a movement culture. I've noticed that everybody's outside and everybody's riding bikes. As a result, everybody's extremely healthy. So this is back to your point. You just need to really live in nature and be healthy. I want to take one thing that you said, GLP-1, Ozempic. I think the world's going to absolutely be obliterated by what it's causing. But there's something that's been happening to all of these women who are taking Ozempic right now. They're all getting pregnant when they couldn't get pregnant before. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't. Interesting.
They're supposedly, because they're metabolizing fat, it's estrogen dominant in the fat. And so it's pumping it up. So ones that weren't able to get pregnant are getting pregnant. Meanwhile, they have this horrible drug that's eating away their system at the same time. So what do you think the answer is? I mean, people, there's Akkermansia, which is a natural GLP-1. Do you recommend that people take something like that? Or are you more about just whole foods back into nature?
I have no problem with it if everyone's doing the right things already.
Right. So if they're reducing chemicals, clean water, clean environment. Do you live in the city?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
How do you keep your environment?
My environment at home is very well optimized. I mean, I try to be out of London as much as I can, but I love London for being near the family, the connections, running the companies, and I balance my, as you said to me before, it looks like you caught the sun. Yeah, I do. I'm in the sun most of the year round. Healthy sun exposure. For instance, my house has triple filtered, reverse osmosis, hydrogen water on tap.
Is that right to even the shower heads?
Yes.
Oh my God.
But not hydrogen shower though.
Yeah.
That's the only thing because it can't produce it quick enough. I have air filtration system. I also have air filters in each room of the house. I have non-flicker full spectrum LED lighting throughout the house, which is Circadian by Ray Lighting, fantastic brand in the UK. I also have a Samina sleep system, which is grounded, so grounded bed sheets, and raised head, so your brain detoxifies and your digestive system is supported while you sleep. I have a remote control that turns off every plug and the Wi-Fi at night, so it's almost like a dead spot. I have EMF protected glass so that the 5G from London doesn't get in. I could go on. I mean, it's like, the house is optimized. Blackout.
I feel like we should bring cameras in and do a tour of your house.
I will be doing content at some point soon.
Yeah.
I moved in a year ago, but I've traveled probably about 8 months since I moved in. So
I'd be happy to do it.
so when you come to London for the summit, perhaps you should pop round.
I would, because this is one of the things we're going to set up in Dubai, a display home. So we're going to take all of the best inputs that we can to make that home as grounded and as natural as possible. I'd love your input in it. We're working with tourism out there. We're going to put in a 12-bedroom, 20-some-odd thousand square foot home and just do it out so we can bring people and kids through so that they can actually interact. Because a lot of what you're talking about, even in my own journey, there's all these technologies, but if I invest in it, which I do, and it's the wrong one, there's a lot of money wasted in that, and it takes a while to figure out what actually works and what doesn't work. And this is part of what you're doing, is you're testing all this out and you're saying, this works for this reason, this is why I like it, and this is why I use it. So you're saving people time and money. But it's still hard because people can't touch it. There's nowhere where you can go today and touch it.
I mean, things are happening quite quickly. Like a lot of spas and places like that are starting to integrate a lot of these things. And, I mean, again, to mention the Health Optimization Summit, the whole expo floor is curated by me. Every single brand, every single product is curated by me personally. And it's a bottleneck for the company, I'm not going to lie, but it holds the standard. So you can walk around and pick all of the different things, the filters I have at home, for the air, the water filters, the reverse osmosis system, the lighting, the lot, everything. So you can literally walk around and build your own home by going to the summit. You can also try loads of healthy, cool foods. And
I'm super excited about being there, by the way.
We're looking like we're going to have 4,250 people this year, which is
that's going to be amazing.
Pretty big jump again. So yeah, it's going to be exciting.
I'm also excited about the opportunity you've given us to actually put hands and show people and have a space, because really at the end of all of this, taking the body out of stress and doing that in small incremental ways has the most impact, and then everything else, the environment and all those things added on top of that. So I'm really happy to be a part of the summit, which I encourage anybody who's not going. Is there a limit to people who can't go?
Around 4,300 people.
So we're done.
We're nearly done. Yeah, we're projecting to hit capacity. Yeah. So for the first year fully, which is great.
So by the time this comes out, people are we'll show them what happens at the summit, because we're going to document it. We're going to document it from the outside for someone who can't go, and we're going to share that around the world in our social platforms.
Awesome.
So I'm super excited about that. The summit now. There's a lot of summits that are out there. Yours is different, remarkably, because you're focusing on health and health optimization. How do you stay away from or how do you balance I need revenue, I need business, and I also need to maintain integrity? Like, how have you kept that balance? Because this is where most people go wrong, I believe.
How do I maintain integrity? I mean,
you get offers all the time.
Yeah,
there's things that you turn
no,
down.
I mean, I think the thing is my ultimate goal is to leave the world a little bit better than I found it. And I think every human on this planet should have the same mission, because the world will become increasingly better and better and better, and happier and happier and happier, less wars, more happiness, better families, better kids, and can build legacy, which I think is super important. But that's my ultimate driver, other than, the one above that, which is my grandkids looking at me going, here's a pretty good dude, he helped change the world for the better. Those are my two driving factors. So I think breaking integrity isn't an issue at all. And in terms of money, there's so many amazing brands and products and people. And when you have 4,250 people all contributing towards building an event, and all these brands contributing to an event, the compounding effect of it makes it a good business. It takes a long time to build an event to be a profitable event, and for me it was a big risk, but I did it for the mission, not for the money. But there's no challenge in terms of breaking integrity. I mean, I do see a lot of people coming to this space, and there's, you know, some.
There's a lot of people try to put up events,
Yeah.
and they just try to throw them up, bring brands together. There is no real curation.
But it's a short-term. It's a short-term thing.
Yeah.
Look, for instance, you know, for instance, if we say, okay, fine, we'll have 4 red light brands on the floor, okay, because we want the money. It's like, well, the experience for the event, the people are going to be like, well, why is there 4 red light brands there? They're just trying to make money.
Sure.
Opposed to saying, okay, we have 2. Some people have alternatives up to 2. People then feel like it's curated, that you're not just trying to sell them stuff and they want to come back next year. Opposed to the short-term money grab. You know, I mean, I think as I hit 44, 45, as like, everything I do now should be for the future, not in the short-term fleeting desires or anything. You know, and that's personal and business. It's like, how do I create a sustainable business and legacy so I can provide for a family and not just short-term stuff? And I think if you take the money in the short term, you're selling your soul for the long term. Whereas if you're always optimizing for the long term, what's the long-term view in this? Then I think you're going to build something of significance. And, you know, integrity is what you do when no one's looking. I think if you just need to have that as a mindset. And then it's like, does this help the long term? No, it doesn't. So, you know, we turn down brands that don't align with us. You know, I see a lot of brands popping up and online retailers selling health stuff and just selling stuff that has got nasty ingredients under the label of healthy. And I'm like, I turn my nose up at it and go, that's not really helping. It's just selling stuff. So I think when you have integrity, you build towards integrity constantly, and all the team know that. For instance, we had a situation in the company about 6 months ago, and it was like, oh, we have, let's say, 10 VIPs that rolled their tickets from last year to the next year because they can't make it. Do we contact them? Because that's 10 tickets, you know, at $1,500 a ticket. Do we contact them and then potentially lose those 10 spots? Or do we just resell them? Or do we wait for them to reach out to us? I was like, to the team, what's the right thing to do?
Mm-hmm.
Contact them. Okay,
Yeah.
That's what we do.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and that, it starts with the leader and it filters down. And if everyone thinks it's okay to get out of something, it's okay to get out of something all the time. Whereas if the leader says, this is as it is, we do the right thing, people already have the right moral compass. They already know what happens in the company. And then it's self-fulfilling. It becomes a better machine in time, and everyone holds you accountable and you hold everyone accountable, and it becomes more integral and more over a period of time. And that's how we operate as a company, like in any one of my ventures. And
that's really cool. What scares you the most about what's happening in the world today? Like what keeps you up at night, if anything, about what's happening with health, the company, the government regulations, just open floor? What scares you the most?
Nothing scares me. I'm not saying that from a place of ego. I don't watch the news. If something's big and bad enough, I hear about it through friends and noise and stuff. I don't like to have my nervous system's already running at a really high level. I don't need more noise. When things are important, they come to me. So nothing really keeps me up. Sleep is number 1 hack for me, and winding down is a number 1 hack. What I don't like, is probably a better way to put it, is war. Because more war doesn't ever result in less war.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
sure.
I think if someone's bombing and the other people don't retaliate and continue to not retaliate, it's kicking a man when he's down. And no one looks at someone good when they kick a man when he's down.
You have a very good emotional guard, but I just felt a lot of emotion there for a second.
No, I just think we have one opportunity to live on this planet, and we should all enjoy it to the best of our ability and not fight each other or kill each other. And I think the world is obsessed with killing each other, mm-hmm. including in just about every movie you ever see on Netflix has murder and killing and violence, and it's become, you know, habitual for most people to have it in their day-to-day lives. And I think we didn't evolve with that sort of negativity all day, every day. So my emotional reaction is, I think it's ridiculous that humans insist on killing each other and not living life to the fullest.
In the middle of all these great conversations, sometimes you still need to take a minute to stop and breathe. Let's do that together. We're going to breathe 3 times through the mouth and 3 times to the nose. This is going to activate and rebalance your parasympathetic nervous system so you can absorb more. Breathe in with me through your mouth. 2. 3. Now 3 breaths through the nose. 2. 3. Now with that simple 6-breath reset, you can go back and enjoy more content. You mentioned you don't watch the news, and I don't either, and I'm assuming you actually don't watch a lot of other movies as well. What's the reason behind that? I know what it is for me, but I think people would love to hear that from you, because you've made your life about making change.
If I use the word lethargic, I've now planted that in your mind. One word. And even if it's a passing thought in 20 minutes time, or used in your diction in a few weeks time for whatever, it just falls out because it's in your unconscious mind. I've influenced you. Mm-hmm. Watching the news, like for instance, I remember when the internet first came out back in the day, and they were like, oh, it's a fad, it's not going to last. And it was sensational newspapers trying to sell papers by saying this stuff, and like when the iPad came out, it's this iPad, it's a pad, and then they put that to a women's hygiene product and said it's never going to last. It's like, but this is sensational media, and they're great at this. This is what their job is, to push stuff out, and we're influenced by it all day, every day. It's funny because I watched a movie a few weeks ago, I think it was called I Love You Man. It was a really great movie, but the characters, the men in it, were basically not strong men. They were pushed and bossed around at work. It was almost like they'd lost the man in them, and their partner was more the masculine. The woman in the role was the more masculine of the two, and the man was more feminine. 12, 13-year-old movie, and I'm like, traditional. I'm more traditional in my mindset. I believe in equality. Don't get me wrong, but I believe that there's a polarity needed for, polarity between partners. And I felt like it's social programming, killing on movies, roles changing in movies. All of these things are influencing us all day, every day. I don't want to be influenced by, things like killing or how I should be in a relationship without realizing I'm being programming. In fact, I read a quote the other week on Instagram, of all places, ironically, was this like, the Chinese know that the news is propaganda, and yet in America and England, we still don't realize it. And so I don't like to be influenced by those things. If something's important, I'll hear about it.
Yeah,
and if there's something I can affect change in, I will. But I don't want to hear all this.
Do you think that the news and the media and the movies, do you think that they're reflecting society and consciousness, or they're driving society?
They're driving it somewhere.
Right.
100%.
In your opinion, is there an action, or is there a malevolent force that's driving that's coordinated? Or
no, I just think it's human stupidity. Mm-hmm. To be honest, I mean, we're so smart we can justify anything, but so stupid we can justify anything. Humans are really, really smart, but we're so stupid. You put a bowl of processed food in front of a dog, it won't eat it. You put processed food in front of a human and we guzzle it down. They trust their senses, we don't. Right. So I think I don't think it's necessarily an overarching agenda, and I think it's just like, for instance, during the pandemic, for instance, people were like, "Oh, it's a conspiracy. Everything's a conspiracy." I think no. I think it's just commercial world. Pharmaceuticals driving sales, face mask companies driving face masks, and getting compliance done so that everyone has to wear one, and it filters all the way down, even down to the testing. Imagine if you owned a testing company and you could get compliance in to say that people couldn't travel unless they'd been tested. You're going to make a few quid. It's just commercial everywhere. It's not an overarching agenda to change the world for the negative. It's just not reality. It's hard enough running a company of 20 people, let alone countries of millions and millions and millions. It just doesn't work that way. Right. So I think it's just stupidity and people having choice and being influenced. If you think about if you think about certain things that are prevalent these days, you know, various mindsets. So for instance, once upon a time, you wouldn't see, if you look at pictures back in the 50s, you wouldn't see obese people on the beach.
Not at all.
And these days you do. And why is that? Well, because it's much more predominant in terms of the foods and how marketing is driving eating these food products. Whereas back then it wasn't. How many medications are people in on average? I think in America it was an average of 7 medications. You know, why is that? Well, it's all over TV. I must have that. I'm going to be healthier for it. It's like, and yet they don't take a walk every day. So it's just the way that the world is going commercially. And I think, you know, the way to change that is by changing rules around commercializing things that for profit, or changing models on that. And I think there's a good movement towards that right now, regardless of political views. And I'm not going down that route at all. I do think that things are changing quite quickly with broad sweeping changes in terms of the health space with RFK. And I think the world is starting to wake up a bit, little by little.
What about AI? Because I mean, that really is changing things. What do you see the role of AI is in, let's say, health and wellness of people coming over the next couple of years?
Great question. I like this one.
It's a deep one, right?
I like this because, first of all, as it stands at the moment, with exceptions, the information that AI knows about humans is inputted by humans. And so it can only advise based on what has been inputted into it. At the moment, you know, it is in some areas able to figure out new things. Like for instance, Elon, quote Elon from a few weeks ago, he was saying it's going to figure out new physics. Grok will figure out new physics within the next 2 years, almost certainly. You know, I think in terms of health, it's regarding the data that goes into it. And it requires surgeons to be reporting back on symptoms and what happens after healing in surgery and things like this. However, collecting the data and putting into it and looking at the patterns between, you know, someone that has, for instance, high B12 but is chronic fatigued, you know, if you see that across millions of data, millions of people, and then you see actually it's a common factor is actually this gene MTHFR is downregulated, so therefore they're not utilizing B12, for instance, it can see patterns that we can't see.
Right, faster, quicker,
I
in real
think
time.
within healthcare, not necessarily medical, because I think medical industry is going to steer away from that or use it for pharmaceuticals. As on the assumption that AI is AI and not biased based on reprogramming, then I think it's going to be fantastic. Because, for instance, I'll give you an example with the MTHFR gene I mentioned earlier on. For over 10 years now, whenever I get some DNA results, I look at it and it would take me quite a lot of time to figure out what supplements in what ratio for this person based on their genes. This is a lot of data. You can now upload that data into ChatGPT and say, based on methylation, what supplements should I use for this person, and just explain a bit more about it, and it does it immediately. Very, very accurately. So if you think about that as just one set of genes right now, one set of problems, imagine what it can be like. I have mercury toxicity, and here's my DNA. Come back. Okay, so you've got the MTHFR gene, which means you're downregulated with this. This is what you supplement with. That's how quickly it's going to go, and that's, you know,
it's going to bring quicker solutions.
Yeah, but it does require people constantly testing and doing stuff and knowing that data, but it can see the patterns in it for sure. So I think it's really exciting how it's going to go for sure.
Yeah, I have the fortunate ability, because I've recorded everything that I've said. I have a different viewpoint on health. Just as being a practitioner, I looked at the systems. I didn't come in from practice. I came in from logistics, business, programming and support. So I think in numbers and patterns. Then I just started seeing all of these issues with the way that we look at the human body. Not the science about it, but the way that we organize the science, like the story we tell about ourselves. Like one of the big ones for me was the bones don't touch in the body. And I started practicing chiropractic. Well, if the bones don't touch, they're not structure. So when someone says a structural issue, is that, and these are like big, deep rabbit holes. And you're right, the AI models currently don't support it because we've had to train our AI to think like us. I have the data. I have 40,000 videos and discussions. So I can put that in there, but what you were saying is right. I think it's going to advance holistic healthcare, health and wellness, but medicine is going to use it differently, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think it will. But however, I think if AI is used properly, for instance, let's put it this way. If we talk about the NHS in the UK, which is, the healthcare system, government-owned one, they have something called the backbone, which is all your records from all your doctors and everything goes into this one system. Imagine if that was AI generated and saying, okay, we've got 30 million people on this database or 40 million people on this database, and we see these are the routes that we go down, and we see that they are average coming in 4 times a year. These are the drugs that are on, and it's just this. Okay, let's upload all of their DNA data. Let's upload all of this stuff. Oh, let's look at the common patterns. Okay, what should we be doing? We can literally change it. It can
Overnight.
change it.
Yeah. I agree with that. I just don't know if that because that actually will produce the patterns. The economics of medicine requires on us not being able to see the patterns, because if we saw the patterns, we'd do something different.
Yeah, and it's a financial thing. I mean, if you look at Gary Brecker for a second, when he worked as a mortality statistician, and I quote this quite frequently because it's such an impactful, profound finding. He worked as a mortality statistician for insurance companies at the highest level, looking at the patterns of how long someone would live for. Okay, and they could see what someone's health status was, and they could predict within 2 weeks how long that person will be alive.
Right.
The number one predictor of a 50% less life length was lonely or no relationships.
Yeah.
Okay. Some of the longest living people actually had higher cholesterol. Pharmaceutical industry would want you to think that people on statins would live longer, minimally, if anything, for quite heavy drugs for a long time. Each industry is biased to making more money. Who do you think is probably more correct? The ones trying to keep people alive or predict their life length, or the ones trying to sell drugs?
Yeah,
it's pretty obvious. I mean, I would say it's pretty obvious, right? When you think like that, these guys are going to do everything to protect the use of drugs implemented into everywhere. AI is going to recommend what's going to work, like these guys. So the question is how long until they get grips of it, like they probably did with Google?
Yeah.
And then everything ends up at medicine. At the moment, we have a free-for-all with an AI, and it's very minimally tweaked.
Right.
But how long that goes until adverts are all over it?
I'm starting to see the pattern. It's funny because we have such a base of people worldwide. They're asking about fascia and fascial maneuvers. I'm starting to see it come up on people's AI as a possible recommendation, which is kind of cool. What do you think is the best, if you've looked at all the stuff, everything from, and we're going to just assume that being in nature is close to nature, whole foods is the standard. After that, what is the number one thing that people can do to maintain health?
Boring and basic. Sleep well. It's not easily marketable, and some of my colleagues like pushing all of these different things. I talk about, to quote Dr. Ted Akikoso, who runs Transcriptions Methylene Brew brand, 212 IQ, I think he is.
Wow.
Eat well, sleep well, hydrate well, sun well, ground well, move well, relate well.
Basically.
Yeah. The basics well. and
that's what we come back to all the time.
And number one is sleep. We do damage to our body when we're awake in multiple ways. We then sleep to reverse that damage using the nutrients and the energy that we've collected during the day. In fact, J.J. Virgin says this very well. You don't grow muscles in the gym. You damage them. You grow the muscles while you sleep. Right?
So how do you, there's this whole thing around sleep. For example, people say you need 8 or 9 hours. Some people say you need less. Do you think it's the same for everybody? Or in your opinion, is it changed by person?
It's what your body needs.
How do you know?
And light. Well, okay, this is a really good way of testing it. Okay, so when I sleep in a blacked out room and I've worn blue blocking glasses for 2 hours at least before bed, normally I would sleep 7 hours, 41 minutes. My body needs that long to repair the damage, to reverse the damage from the day. When I've had a surgery, such as I had a tonsil taken out, or 75% of the tonsil taken out 3 weeks ago, I had an extra hour and a half a day. My body needed more time to repair, to heal, And I was quite happy with that because it was quite painful for 2 or 3 weeks. So I was like, the more time I was semi-asleep, because I had to sleep sitting up, the better. So I healed quicker. And put it to the opposite, if I slept for 1 minute a day, I probably wouldn't heal very quickly. And yet most people think sleeping is a tick box. They go to bed with the lights on before they straight jump into bed, which means their body thinks it's still daytime because of the lights at the angle. And then they wake up with sunrises because they haven't got a blackout room. So their body goes, okay, it's still daytime. I'm going to sleep because I'm exhausted. Oh, now the sun rises up, it's daytime. An animal might kill me, which is the evolutionary process for being woken by daylight. So they sleep when they're exhausted and they wake up with daylight. So the window is short. So if you have that blacked out and you wear blue blockers or have candlelight before bed and have blackout blinds in the morning, you'll see how much sleep you actually need when you don't have an alarm clock and you don't have any of these distractions. And for me, it's 7 hours, 41 minutes if I haven't had surgeries or my body, if I haven't trained very hard. However, if I've trained very hard, I need another 20 minutes. And this is consistent since like 2017, since I first got an Oura ring. Mm-hmm. And I've been tracking ever since with, at the moment I'm wearing Ultra Human and the Gabbett ring.
Right.
And I test to see how close they are. But it's consistent. For like 7 years, 8 years, train, need 20 minutes more, and you get hungrier. And you're repairing more during the sleep. Have a surgery, it can be an hour or 2, even more. Mm-hmm. Sunlight, a bed with lights on, and then waking with sunlight, much shorter. Blackout blinds, much longer. So it's like we're craving sleep, and you either give your body enough, removing the cues that wake us up, or you don't. And those that age faster, it's actually, I was discussing this over dinner last night, and it's like someone said to me, well, actually, when you have kids, your life shortens because you sleep less. And actually, it's incorrect. It's actually incorrect because women actually that have more children later as well actually have a longer life. It's not necessarily about the sleep. And when you look at a breastfeeding mum's sleep patterns, they drop straight into deep. It doesn't go, light REM deep in the stages. It goes straight into deep because their body goes, I'm going to grab this because I have to stay alive and healthy to bring this kid up. Otherwise it dies. So evolutionary processes are pretty incredible. Sleep. Because if you're, obviously the second one is food and hydration.
Sure.
But really, the hydration and the food become irrelevant if you're not sleeping properly or enough. And most people are underslept, even if it's by 20 minutes, half an hour. And yet then they're doing detox teas and cleanses and all this stuff, thinking that they need to detox more. In fact, all they need to do is sleep more in the first place. Yeah. So that's my non-negotiable number one biohack of all would be blue blocking glasses, on the assumption you're not living on a desert island with no fake lights.
What I hear you saying, and I'll summarize it, is that, and this is a journey of people who have health issues and start biohacking or learning a lot, is there's a lot of use of technology, and for everything, that technology starts to stimulate or spin off into things that make my environment better so that I can function, like taking out EMFs, sleeping better, taking chemicals out, having better water. So basically, all of these things are basically returning us to nature. Mm-hmm. So the closer we can move to nature.
Yeah, there's a quote, it's the further we go from nature, the sicker we get.
Good quote. That's actually a great place to end this. Tim, it's been a pleasure getting to know you. I'm looking forward to spending more time. You're a brilliant man, and you have spent a lot of time thinking about these things. And I want people to use the same things that I've used over the years by listening to you, because I don't have the time to look at everything, but you certainly have. And use the information that you've put out there. What's the best place for people and best way for people to engage with you and ongoing?
Number one place is obviously Instagram, Tim Biohacker. That's where most of my content is, but also the Health Optimization podcast is where I interview our keynote speakers, such as yourself, where I guess the deeper dives are and more interesting stuff. Instagram, you get 30 seconds to catch someone's attention and teach them something that they might implement into their life, which is great, but that's it. Or most importantly, the Health Optimization Summit.
Great. Awesome. Thank you so much for
having
spending
me.
time today. Thanks for tuning in. And if you enjoyed this content, follow us on social media channels, The Human Garage Experience, Apple, Spotify, and all other channels. We're on a mission to inspire 1 billion people worldwide, and the way that you participate is by liking, subscribing, and sharing our content. Every share that you take brings us one step closer to that billion people. This has been a fantastic episode. We enjoyed presenting it to you. Be a part of this worldwide revolution and share it now.